August 1995, a 15-ton bulldozer smashes through the wall of Denmark's most secure prison. 12 inmates sprint through the hole into the night. One of them is Bo Larsen, a man who's already escaped 6 times before. They catch him 3 weeks later, but he escapes again. They transfer him to a higher security facility, and he walks out dressed as a janitor. They put him under constant watch, and he buries himself in a container of dead leaves and rides out on a garbage truck. Denmark doesn't just have an escape problem. They have a Bo Larsen problem. Parliament rewrites laws because of him. Prisons install new security systems because of him. Guards are fired, wardens are humiliated, and the justice system becomes a national joke, all because one man refuses to stay locked up. By 2014, his record stands at 21 escapes. No prisoner in European history has ever come close. Then he does it again, sawing through bars with a smuggled blade, rappelling 5 stories on a bedsheet rope, and shattering his ankle on impact. He escapes anyway. But this 20-second breakout ends differently. Not with recapture, with destruction. What finally satisfies a man addicted to escape? How did freedom become his prison? 1989, Copenhagen. Bo Larsen is 15 and already a regular at the police station. He grew up under an alcoholic father who beat him bloody and learned to run before he learned much else. His childhood was a revolving door of foster placements and juvenile facilities, none of which could contain his restless fury. At 8, he stole his first car for a joyride. At 13, he robbed a gas station with a bayonet pressed against the clerk's throat, with his hands shaking with adrenaline but his voice ice cold. Those stunts landed him in youth detention, but the walls couldn't hold him. One night, teenage Brian finds a door left unlocked after lights out. No guard watching and no alarm triggered. He simply walks through it and disappears into the dark streets of Copenhagen. By dawn, he's gone without a trace, his first escape. Something clicks behind his eyes, a realization that would shape the next 30 years of his life. Once free, Brian pushes harder. Over the next few years, he cycles through custody so fast that guards barely learn his name before he vanishes again. He studies every lock, memorizes every routine, times every guard rotation down to the second. Doors, he realizes, are designed by people, and people make mistakes. If a guard forgets to check a window, if paperwork opens an exit, if someone leaves keys on a desk for 30 seconds too long, young Larsen exploits it. He hides in cleaning closets until the night shift thins out. He slips handcuffs with wrists greased from the dinner tray. He's not a hulking mastermind. He's wiry, quiet, restless, and absolutely fearless. Each recapture only teaches him how to escape next time. The system thinks it's punishing him. Brian thinks it's training him. By the early 1990s, Brian has escaped a dozen times from juvenile centers, jails, even a courthouse lockup where he slipped away while guards argued over paperwork. Denmark's authorities are baffled. This skinny teenager treats locked doors as invitations. They decide to transfer him somewhere with higher walls and harder men. At 21, Brian enters Vridsluslilla State Prison outside Copenhagen, a grim Victorian-era fortress built in 1859 to break men like him. The message from authorities is clear. This is where your games end. But Brian's already cataloging the guard rotations, timing the camera blind spots, noting which corridors echo footsteps and which swallow sound. He doesn't know how he'll escape yet, he just knows he will. And late one summer night in 1995, an opportunity comes crashing through the prison walls, literally. What could possibly breach a fortress built to hold Denmark's most dangerous criminals? And why was Bo Larsen awake at midnight to see it happen? August 1995, Vridsluslilla Prison. Most inmates sleep in their cells, but Brian lies awake on his thin mattress, listening to highway traffic humming beyond the prison yard. He's been restless for weeks, testing routines and probing for weaknesses. Then, boom. The night explodes in screeching metal and brick dust. An enormous wheel loader, a 15-ton construction vehicle with a bucket the size of a bathtub, plows straight through the perimeter wall, blasting open a gap wide enough to fit a bus. Alarms shriek across the compound. Inmates spring from their bunks as concrete chunks rain down like hail. Guards in the watchtowers shine spotlights through swirling dust, trying to comprehend what just happened. Someone on the outside has just torn the prison open. Brian doesn't hesitate. He's at his window in seconds, peering through the chaos at headlights and a gaping wound in the outer wall. This is no accident. It's a coordinated break, and he's not going to miss his chance. He yells down the corridor, riling up other prisoners, turning confusion into pandemonium. In the chaos, he slips into the courtyard. Perhaps a panicked guard opened a wrong door. Perhaps an older inmate knew how to jimmy a lock. The details blur in the frenzy. Brian joins a surging knot of men dashing toward the breach. Somewhere a guard screams for everyone to get down, his voice cracking with fear. But Brian is already through the hole and sprinting across open ground toward the tree line. He emerges outside the prison wall into freedom, one of 12 inmates who spill out before authorities can seal the opening. For a heartbeat, the men freeze under pale orange streetlights, bewildered to actually be standing on the other side. Brian grins through bloody scrapes and cement dust. Then they scatter like startled birds, each man choosing his own direction. Brian vaults a fence and disappears into a stand of trees beyond the road. Behind him, guards finally fire warning shots into the air, far too late to matter. The Vridslusalila 12 are loose, and Brian Bo Larsen just pulled off his boldest escape yet. By morning, Danish media are frenzied. A bulldozer smashing through a prison wall sounds like Hollywood fiction. Brian's name dominates every headline. Did he orchestrate it? Was it an accomplice executing his plan from the outside? Authorities suspect an inside-outside job. The timing was too perfect, and the driver too skilled at finding the weakest section of wall. All they know for certain, Brian Bo Larsen has vanished again. A massive manhunt unfolds across Denmark. Roadblocks on every major highway, checkpoints at train stations and ferry ports, hundreds of officers combing cities and countryside. It takes weeks of hunting and a tip from a frightened associate before Brian is finally cornered in a small seaside town on the Danish coast. Surrounded and unarmed, he surrenders quietly, almost peacefully. Back into handcuffs, his escape is over, for now. But if police think this capture will humble him, they're dead wrong. At his next court appearance, Brian actually winks at the TV cameras. Prison has become a puzzle to solve, and he's just proven he can crack the biggest puzzle box in Denmark. Officials respond by fortifying Vridslusalila with temporary barriers over the gaping hole and upgraded perimeter defenses across the country. The message is never again. Larsen sees only new challenges to overcome. As guards lead him into yet another cell, a different prison this time, one supposedly without any weak spots. Brian's already studying the hinges on the door. He escaped through a literal hole in a wall. What's a mere lock compared to that? What will he try next? Brian's cat-and-mouse war with Danish authorities enters a new phase. Through the late 1990s, every time he's locked up, he finds a way out. The escapes come in all shapes and sizes, each one more creative than the last. Once he squeezes through a ventilation duct like a contortionist, scraping skin off his shoulders to fit through a gap barely wider than his skull. Another time, he impersonates a janitor and strolls past an oblivious guard post with a mop in hand, nodding politely as he walks straight out the front entrance. Some escapes are laughably simple. He slips out a back door during meal delivery when a cook leaves it propped open for ventilation. Others are carefully engineered over weeks of observation. Denmark's prisons, known for their relative lack of barbed wire and harsh conditions, inmates wear their own clothes and dine with family once a week, give Brian just enough slack to exploit. He stays polite, even well-behaved for weeks at a stretch, lulling staff into a comfortable routine. Then, the moment someone's guard drops, he's gone like smoke. By 2000, Brian has racked up 15 successful breakouts, a number that staggers prison officials across Europe. They try transferring him between facilities, thinking a new environment will throw him off balance. But it doesn't matter. He's like water, finding every crack in every container. In one dramatic incident that year, Brian springs himself from a provincial jail and steals a sedan for his getaway. Prison sirens wail behind him as he floors the accelerator onto a country highway. headlights cutting through the night. Minutes later, red-blue lights flare in his rearview mirror. Brian pushes the stolen car to 120 kilometers per hour, weaving through sparse late-night traffic. You can almost picture him grinning into the wind, savoring the absurd freedom of the moment. Up ahead, a police roadblock materializes, spike strips and squad cars blocking the road. He swerves wildly, loses control, and the stolen car plows into a ditch with a crunch of metal. Bruised but alive, Brian crawls from the wreck and bolts into surrounding woods on foot. Police dogs track him for hours through brambles and marshland, before a K-9 unit finds him crouching under a pile of leaves, shivering and exhausted. That night, Brian is dragged back in cuffs, mud-covered, and laughing hoarsely to himself. Another failure, another lesson learned. After that stunt, Danish courts throw the book at him with extended sentences and warnings of zero leniency. They ship him to a supposedly escape-proof facility with extra guards assigned specifically to watch him. Any other inmate might have broken by now. Brian has spent the majority of his adult life behind bars, more years locked up than free. But he wears his escapades like medals of honor. Inmates swap stories about him in the prison yard like he's some kind of folk hero, and he's nowhere close to done. His cleverest escape comes in 2004, and it will leave Danish authorities red-faced for years. By now, guards shadow Brian's every move, but they can't cage him in solitary confinement forever, or so they believe. He's assigned to a prison work crew, raking autumn leaves in the exercise yard under close watch. Mountains of brown and orange leaves pile into a large metal shipping container to be hauled off-site for composting. Brian works diligently, shoveling load after load, keeping his head down like a model prisoner. A bored guard taps his foot nearby, impatient to finish the mundane task. The container fills. A waste truck rumbles through the prison gates, forklifts ready to haul the container away. Brian wipes his brow, exchanges a casual word with the guard about the weather. Everything is perfectly normal. The guard turns away to signal the truck driver. That's when Brian climbs into the container and buries himself under a crackling blanket of dry leaves. But what if he gets compacted by the truck? The truck's forklift clamps onto the container and hoists it up. Brian holds his breath in the darkness, heart pounding against his ribs, leaves pressing against his face. The container sways as the truck drives out through the prison gates, past the checkpoints, past the guards, past the walls. Inside the prison, panic spreads within minutes. They can't find Brian anywhere. Did he evaporate into thin air? Guards scramble through every corridor, sounding alarms, conducting emergency head counts. Out on the road, the oblivious driver hauls his leafy cargo toward the municipal dump site, with an unwanted passenger buried inside. Miles later, at an empty field on the outskirts of town, the container tips upward to unload. A mountain of leaves spills out onto the ground, and Brian Bo Larsen rolls free with them, grinning ear to ear and covered head to toe in dead foliage. He gives the dumbfounded driver a cheeky salute and dashes into the nearby woods before the man can even process what he's seeing. By the time the prison figures out how their most notorious inmate escaped, Brian has hitchhiked clear across the island to the opposite coast. Humiliated officials tighten policies yet again. No more outside work duty for Larsen, ever. Next time, he'll be confined to his cell at all times. Next time, there will be absolutely no chances for him to exploit. But next time is exactly what Brian lives for. He's recaptured again after a few weeks of laying low in Copenhagen, found in a cheap apartment with a fake ID. As guards lead him back to prison, older now Gaunter, but still wearing that infuriating smirk. Denmark wonders, how many lives does this man have? 21 escapes by some counts. It's as if no cage can hold him. Parliament debates tougher measures for high-risk inmates. The prison service quietly upgrades facilities across the country. Everyone knows one thing for certain. Brian Bo Larsen will try again. In 2014, at age 40, Brian attempts his masterpiece. What tools could he possibly build inside Denmark's most secure prison? And what happens when the escape king finally pushes his luck too far? December 12th, 2014. Vridzluzlila Prison, midnight. Brian Bo Larsen is back where he started, locked in Denmark's most secure prison on a 7-year armed robbery sentence. He's 40 now, and the whole country knows his face. Guards check on him constantly. They call him the Escape King, not fondly. Brian pretends to be resigned. He's taken up reading, behaves politely, thanks guards for extra blankets. Internally, he's been plotting for months. Prison staff, hoping to rehabilitate him, had eased some restrictions, allowed him workshop access, some extra recreation. A tiny mistake. Brian took full advantage. Piece by piece, night after night, he assembled 2 critical tools: a hacksaw blade smuggled in a book binding and a rope ladder braided from torn bed sheets and laundry line. He keeps them hidden in his mattress. He has one shot. If anyone suspects him, they'll never give him another chance. Just after midnight lights out, Brian waits for the roaming guard's footsteps to fade. Then he works. With the hacksaw blade, he cuts at his cell window bars, slowly, silently, metal on metal in near darkness. He pauses at the faintest noise. Hour after hour, he saws. By 4 a.m., his forearms burn and his heart pounds. Finally, with a soft snap, the last iron bar gives way. He slides the severed bars aside. The opening is just wide enough. Frigid winter wind slices into the cell. Freedom flowing in. Brian feeds one end of his rope ladder through the window, anchors it to the remaining bars, squeezes his lean frame out, and ascends hand over hand to the roof in the moonlight. There are no alarms, not yet. Perched on the roof, breath fogging the air, Brian can see the outer perimeter and open sky beyond. He secures his second rope, a longer one, to a ventilation pipe and starts lowering himself along the outer wall. A 17-meter drop, nearly 5 stories. The rope of knotted linen creaks under his weight as he descends foot by foot down the sheer concrete. Halfway down, disaster. The rope snaps with a loud rip. Brian plummets the last several meters and smashes onto asphalt, landing awkwardly on his foot. Pain lances up his leg. He's sure something is broken. He lies there gasping. Above, a shout. Someone heard that. Grimacing, Brian forces himself up. Limping badly, adrenaline propelling him, he drags himself into shadows just as searchlights begin sweeping the walls. Inside, guards are sounding the alarm. They've discovered an empty cell with a gaping window. The Escape King is loose. Brian melts into the darkness of the prison yard, scales a secondary fence on pure grit, and limps into the tree line. He's free. His 20-second escape, pulled off with handmade tools like something from a heist film. By the time authorities mobilize, Brian has vanished into the chilly December night. The response is swift and massive. This isn't a cheeky game anymore. It's a national embarrassment. The Danish justice minister publicly demands Larsen's immediate capture. Police roadblocks sprout on every highway out of Copenhagen. Media goes into overdrive. Serial escapee on the run, again, everyone asks, what will he do now? The answer comes fast, and it's not pretty. Brian, foot shattered and knowing capture is inevitable, decides to go all in. He meets an old underworld contact, likely someone who helped coordinate the escape, and within days they commit a brazen armed robbery at a supermarket on Funen. Wearing a wig and brandishing a sawed-off shotgun, Brian limps into the store like a man with nothing left to lose. They steal 100,000 kroner, around $10,000, at gunpoint, money for the run. A desperate, reckless move that puts every officer in Denmark on high alert. With cash in hand, Brian goes on a bender. Eyewitnesses later report he consumed enough drugs to kill a horse and shacked up with a prostitute in a rented car. For a few delirious days, Brian Bo Larsen lives like he's invincible, speeding through small towns, high as a kite, taunting fate. But fate catches up on December 22, 2014. Police spot his car near Kværndrup and give chase. Brian, intoxicated and half out of his mind, tries to outrun them down twisting country roads. Sirens blare and headlights bounce. He loses control and plows through a fence into someone's garden, wrecking the car among trees. The prostitute screams. Brian, utterly disoriented and hallucinating, stumbles out and starts fighting phantoms, swinging at thin air, shouting at people only he can see. The terrified woman flees and flags down a resident. By the time police swarm the scene, they find her in the smoking wreck, but no Brian. He doesn't get far. A K-9 team picks up his scent and tracks crushed foliage to a thicket of bushes. There, hiding underneath branches, is a pitiful sight. A man in a brown wig, mud-splattered and wild-eyed. Brian, shivering, injured, crashing hard from his high. A police dog clamps onto his arm. Officers pile on. The escape king is captured. As they haul him out, he mumbles, "I'm not going back." But there's no fight left. It's over. Brian Bo Larsen's 20-second escape ends face down in the dirt, surrounded by furious Danish police. This time, the system makes no mistakes. Courts add 3 years to his sentence. The prison service throws away the key. They transfer Brian to East Jutland's high-security unit and place him in permanent isolation. No workshops, no leniency. His new cell has everything bolted down: bed, toilet, light fixtures, so he can't fashion tools. Guards rotate his location constantly, never letting him learn a single environment. There will be no 23rd escape. Brian, now pushing 50, spends his days under fluorescent lights, alone with his thoughts. Outside, his story sparks a national conversation. Did 22 escapes expose a laughably lax prison system, or reveal a man who simply refused to be broken? Many Danes feel torn between frustrated anger and morbid admiration. Despite all his escapades, Brian has spent well over half his life behind bars. Each escape only tightened the system's resolve to lock him away forever. In the end, the escape king proved something no one wanted to admit. The only prison that could hold Brian Bo Larsen was Brian Bo Larsen himself.